Hello, 40 Waters. Longtime listeners of the show will know that I'm a big believer in education, especially music education, and I'm excited to announce that this episode is brought to you by TrueFire. I've partnered with TrueFire to bring you an opportunity to get into their lessons at an affordable rate in a way that's going to help you, help the podcast, and get you playing more guitar. I'm excited to say that you can use the code 40WATT, 40WATT, at checkout to get 40% off your first or next purchase through TrueFire. That includes their all-access pass to have access to all of their lessons and videos and jams. I highly recommend it. I use it myself. I'm a huge fan. I truly believe in TrueFire's motto of live, practice, and play. Please use the link below to get started, and happy learning. This episode is brought to you by my Patreon supporters. There's a wonderful crew of people over on Patreon giving money every month to make sure that this show and this podcast happen and cut my overhead costs so that I can keep doing it. I can't express my thanks enough for their support and their belief in what we're doing over here. And if you'd like to join them and help support this podcast, you can do so by going over to patreon.com/40wattpodcast. For as little as $3 a month, you can support this show. And actually, now that we are starting to get sponsors for the episode, my $3 supporters will get the episodes ad-free. If you want to support at a $5 level, you'll get ad-free episodes and you will get additional content every week. I thank all of you that have given money to help keep this going, and I thank all of you that are going to become supporters and help make sure this show keeps happening. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 40 Watt Podcast. This is Season 3, Episode 6. Thank you for coming along for the ride. I greatly appreciate it. Remember, look at the links down below if you're interested in supporting the podcast. Make sure you go over to Patreon. There's a link down below. Make sure you go check out merch, which I'm going to update at some point soon, maybe, kinda-ish. I need to redo graphics. I need some new stuff. But then beyond that, make sure you check out. I'm gonna mention the affiliate link down below for TrueFire. Y'all need lessons. I'm just saying. I've heard you play guitar. You all need lessons, just like I do. I do it as often as I can get away with it. You can get a deal down there. There's a way to get a percentage off. It's 40% off your first purchase with TrueFire using code 40WATT. I think that's the right code. It's down below. You can see it. But in the meantime, make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you hit like, bell icon, follow, friend, whatever the media you're uses to follow people. Make sure you hit those things. And so you know what's coming and what we're doing. In the meantime, I'm going to get on into the episode because I have got Jake Young from the Man the Helm Podcast on this week, and I'm super excited. Jake, how are you today?
Good, man. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
I'm good, man. I'm glad to have you. Actually, full disclosure, listeners, Jake and I actually had about a 2-hour conversation last night on an Instagram Live, and we decided to basically just keep talking. So that's just what we do.
Yeah, it's always a good hang, man.
Yeah, I sort of wish there was a way to record that Instagram Live. That would have been great too. Technically, I could have saved it, but I hate saving long form video on Instagram.
Yeah, it's kind of dicey.
Yeah, no one watches that. No,
right.
No one's watching, especially no one's watching long form video on a media where you can't fast forward or rewind. No, this is not happening. So, Jake, just so my listeners that may not know, tell a little bit about yourself, how you got into podcasting, how you got into music, what you do. Go as far back as you need to. We can be embryonic if you absolutely have to be, but.
Well, I guess the start of it really, growing up, I didn't have players in my family, but music was always a thing for sure. Earliest memories I know, if you hit your classic rock station, that's what my dad was always listening to. But one thing that always stuck out to me, he was a huge Steely Dan fan. And some of that stuff still just sticks with me today. It's crazy how, the stuff you originally listened to that you didn't really pay any mind to just really influences how you kind of go about, your musical journey later on in life. But I can't remember how old I was. I think I was probably about, first, second grade, 8, 9, somewhere in there. I started playing violin, and I really enjoyed it, but it was just one of those kind of get out of the house and go do something, musical for a little bit or some extracurricular activities, so to speak. And I enjoyed it, but I only did it for about a year. And then in middle school, I started playing trumpet, which was good, but it was way too structured. Um, I had private lessons with a guy that was to his defense. I mean, he was a little older. He might have been a little crotchety. You know what I mean? It was play what's on the staff, and we're going to get out of here. Don't do anything else. And I just didn't really enjoy that very much. But when I was in middle school, before I, really got into music, the biggest thing that kind of helped me go along that was I got into skateboarding hot and heavy, man. And, all that with the punk rock stuff. And of course, the guys I was hanging out with, they played instruments, and I ended up dating a girl that started playing guitar. So I had to impress her a little bit. You know what I mean? So it kind of all just fell into place. I ended up getting what was it? A Squire Bullet, that navy blue that was just all over the place, in the late 90s, early 2000s,
I hate that blue to this day.
Right. Yeah. I'm not ashamed that I do not have that guitar still. Some people are like, oh, how can you not have your first guitar? It's like, dude, it's okay. I'm not worried about it. But yeah, once I started, playing, I kind of had like it might sound a little cheesy, but I guess I had my MTV moment, so to speak. The Darkness came on, and I saw Justin Hawkins with his white Les Paul Custom in like 2003, getting back to like the old roots of the classic rock and like Queen, AC/DC, and all that stuff that I absolutely loved listening to growing up. And I was like, oh, this is something way different than what's on right now. And I just got sucked into the Darkness super hard. And I still love that band to this day. It's one of my favorite bands ever. I got to see them last year, and it was almost a religious experience. Very small venue, very intimate, right next to the stage. It was amazing. But yeah, man,
they rock real hard. I will
they
say
do.
that was I loved when they came out. Like I never got really really into them, but I did listen to that first album. I assume it was their first album actually. That first one had, I believe, anything called Love, and
Yep.
That album. And I really appreciated that they were just unabashedly rock and roll,
Right.
and they didn't take themselves too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
They just played great music. I mean, I don't know. I really appreciate the band, even though I never got like really, really deep into it. But that's not uncommon with me and that style of rock and roll.
For sure. Yeah. It's one of those things though, man. It kind of has pushed its way through that specific band in a lot of aspects of my life. My wife and I, we danced, our wedding song was Friday Night from that album. You know what I mean? That's
awesome.
That's our first dance, and being at that concert with her, and we hadn't had an opportunity to see them live, and we were there together, and they started playing that song, and it was amazing to experience that with her as well. We're right up front, just close enough to get the sweat dripping on you. You know what I mean? It was amazing.
So, just because I'm curious, is your wife now the same girl you were trying to impress because she started playing guitar?
She was not.
Okay.
She was not. Thankfully, she was not the same person.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, but
I needed to know because that would have been a neat little bow on the story.
I know, right? No, but we were. I didn't meet her till a little later in life, but when I was using that Strat a lot, I didn't really know what to do. I had a friend I had growing up pretty much through elementary school, and he was a pretty good singer, and he was a halfway decent piano player for his age, just like I was a halfway decent guitar player for a, I don't know, 12, 13-year-old kid.
Yeah.
But when we started playing together, we weren't doing anything besides songwriting. And it really sucked in high school because I don't know if you've noticed this. A lot of younger kids, when they first start picking up the instrument, it almost seems like a competition to see like what you can get to.
Yep.
And
100%.
I felt really bad going through high school, and all these guys and girls were just like, oh man, all you do is play, bar chords or whatever, and you're not really doing anything cool. You're not writing any riffy stuff or shredding or doing all that. And I'm like, yeah. And it sucked being a kid like that and hearing that all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I will say nowadays I can take the riffy stuff that most guitar players that I hang around give me, and I can write a song. We can get a
Yes.
catchy hook, we can get a melody, we can form a song out of these cool riffs that you bring me. You know what I mean? And I'm not
And
trying to like toot my own horn or anything,
yeah,
but that's just one of the things that I've been pretty good at.
yeah, songwriting is it's a lost art. It's one I'm not good at. I try though. I've known some really really great songwriters over the years and been friends with a bunch of them, and I'm always fascinated in the songwriting process. And that's my next stage. That's my next
Yeah.
goal. I've been spending the last few months getting my throat healthy again and my voice healthy again. And so the next stage, the next goal, I came to a realization on my own songwriting. And then I'm sorry, I'm completely tangenting, but
Oh, you're fine.
can totally relate because the songwriting thing is so hard for me. I finally discovered that I have to have that other person, like what you were doing, and to bounce ideas off of. Cannot. I can write a song on my own, but it will never be as good as it probably could be if I had somebody else to bounce things off of.
Right.
Even if it's just to hear it back to me, for them to hear it and give me feedback and say, that's kind of this, or you should do this, or they throw an idea out there. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I was missing. That's what I'm not getting because I'm in my headspace. Anyway, songwriting is such a mystical art to me. So being able to craft songs um, is a is a skill that I think you're right. Too many kids grow up as a competition how good they can be. I've been playing guitar for the show choir, and there's a couple of students who are playing bass and
Hmm.
guitar as well, and so I'm watching them sort of discover musics and different genres and different things as they're coming back to these rehearsals and shows, and we're talking about the music they've been listening to. And I mean, they're into some cool stuff, like the bassist keeps coming back to me talking about Iggy Pop, and
Oh
he's
yeah.
talking to me about Parliament Funkadelic, and he's talking to me. I mean, he's deep. He's going way deep, and I love it. And the guitar player is really into, he's really into blues and jazz, and he's really trying to get into that thing. And so it's been really fun to watch them kind of develop as musicians because they're not doing that thing where it's like they're just trying to outshred each other.
Right.
And
It's not a mini Guitar Center. You know what I mean?
yes, yeah. So you got more into the songwriting. You were able to craft these songs, and so oh uh so what happened? What happened next? I mean, how
S-
far down this rabbit hole did you go?
So we did a few recordings. I don't know where they're at. I'm sure they're somewhere. I know we had a MySpace page, so that tells you how long ago we were doing this. And it was like right when MySpace came out.
Oh
So
sure.
revealing, I guess I'm not too old, but some listeners might think I'm old for saying MySpace. Um,
You know it's still there, right?
oh yeah, oh yeah.
I logged into mine not too long ago. It's still possible.
Yeah, I just don't know what it was. Like, okay, here we go. It was his last name was Root and my last name was Young, and we were the Young Roots. It was an acoustic thing, and that's what we did, right?
Yeah.
And we put out like a 4-song EP. It was pretty cool. Some of them were a little hokey, but we were early teens. We weren't being trying to be too serious about things.
Right.
But
That
yeah,
makes
I
sense.
played with him for quite a while. We ended up forming a band. We did a few small gigs around. I'm originally from Indianapolis, Indiana, and we did some gigs up there, but nothing really materialized out of it. When I graduated high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And Berkeley had a summer program for like 3 weeks or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up going up to Boston to Berkeley for that thing. I had a really great time up there, and I don't mean to throw any shade. Anybody that has been there and you loved it, that's awesome. For me, as an individual, it seemed like I was back at band playing the trumpet. It's like this is
Oh
what you
yeah.
got to do. Now that could have just been the teachers that I interacted with. I'm all I'm saying is my experience.
Yeah.
And on top of that, um, I was having some life stuff. My wife and I, my we met in high school, and we're still together today. And we were kind of getting serious as we were graduating high school about moving in and all this other stuff. I didn't really know what to do, so I went to that summer program. Decided I couldn't really afford to go to Berkeley. I wasn't going to be able to.
Right. Like
Um,
many people.
right. I looked into some of the scholarship and different programs to get in there, and none of it was going to be really feasible. So I ended up coming back to Indianapolis, and my wife and I moved in together. We had a small apartment, and I started working at a big box music store. I worked at Sam Ash instead of Guitar Center.
Yeah.
I really loved that job, man. It was great. Getting to hang around gear, really getting my fix for everything, hanging out with some really awesome people. And this is where the story like derails completely and goes 100% off in left field or whatever you want to call it. And dude, I don't know what it was. You can call it spiritual, cosmic, religious, whatever you want to say. Something in me one day told me I had to join the military. I don't know what it was. I had never talked about it. It threw everybody for a loop. My wife was freaking out. My parents were freaking out. Everybody was just like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
But it was just something I had to do. I can't explain it. And of course, I don't know why I decided I wanted to be the guy in the fight and, whatever you want to call it. I was an infantry guy, and that's what I wanted to do. And my parents and my wife and everybody that I was associated with were freaking out because this is the late 2000s, early 2010s. Yeah. So stuff was still pretty hot and heavy. And they kind of knew that I was going to get done with, the basic training and then the specialized training of whatever I was going to go do. And then I was going to get deployed, which is exactly what happened multiple times, and I was still playing music through all that, but I had this weird thing about me. If I start doing something, man, I just hyper focus on it and everything else kind of goes to the wayside, which is good for a job like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not very good for anything else outside of that job. Right. So, but yeah, I had a good time in the military. I bounced around to a bunch of places, did a couple deployments. The last place I ended up was at Fort Campbell, just right on the Kentucky-Tennessee border. And that's why I'm still here in Clarksville, Sure. But my last job, I was teaching, and I got a bunch of experience, public speaking. I got, 10,000 hours of a master rated facilitation degree or whatever they wanted to call it through the Army. So, the public speaking thing and the teaching thing was never a big deal. About that time too, I started playing with this band. A buddy of mine hit me up and wanted me to start this cover band with him, which we did. And it was called Lights Out. We do have an EP out. I believe that's everywhere on Spotify if you guys want to check that out. Lights Out Band, I believe is what
I'll put the link below.
Yeah. Now, the production quality is not the best. We did not have a lot of money for that EP, but it is what it is. There's a few songs on there that are pretty good.
This is me making a note to put it in the description below because I will forget.
But yeah, I played with those guys for about 3 years, just doing the cover gig stuff, the bar stuff, playing some original shows. We got to open for some awesome people and some not so awesome people during that time frame. Wow. One of those not so awesome people that I was very upset with, everybody's going to laugh about this. We got to play direct support for the band Trapped.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I only know like a little bit about the band, but
it's not worth knowing anymore. Okay. Yeah. And gotcha. It was not a good, it was a bad time. I didn't like that gig. It was so there. Now there were a lot of people there. It was good for that, but man, it just was, it was a bad time. I wasn't happy with that, but we also got to open up for some, more mainstream bands like Rehab, the Bartender song or whatever. Those guys are super rad. Like that song is super hokey and for the radio and all that crap, but the rest of their catalog, dude, they are such a fun band to play with, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But during that time, we were starting to play some more like hard rock stuff, some more alternative stuff. And I needed something to kind of cover that sonic space. Sure. And where's it at? Here we go. Yep. I bought this. The Wampler Dracaris, right? And working at that music store, I had known about Wampler. I knew that they made pedals, but I really didn't know anything more besides that, working up at Sam Ash in Indianapolis. And when I bought that, I started doing some research on Wampler, realized that they had a podcast, and The 9 to 5 I was working at the time, I was there for 10, 11 hours a day, and I could just throw headphones in. And that's what I did. But in turn, I found Chasing Tone. I found the Tone Mob podcast. I found the 40 Watt podcast. I found
Yeah.
60 Cycle Hum, the plethora of just guitar based podcast. And that's what I did. I would just, go to work, put my headphones in, just listen to however many episodes I can get in 10 hours. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
roughly about 10. And I was kind of thinking to myself about it because Blake's podcast, The Tone Mob, he talked about his backstory and how, he was working this 9 to 5 and just kind of hated it.
Yep.
And I was like, dude, I'm in the same boat right now. And this guy just DMs people and talks to people, and now he doesn't have to do this crap anymore. Okay, well, this sounds like a good idea. I don't know how I came up with the name. It was just one of those from the ethers,
Yeah.
and Man the Helm hit me. And I was like, well, what does Man the Helm mean? And, well, it's taking control of your life. You're driving the ship in the direction you want it to go, so to speak. And that's how it started. Now, I will say, if you guys go to the podcast and you check out the first couple episodes, that's just me. It's pretty bad. But once you start,
me too.
Yeah, you know how it rolls. I know too.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I started getting some guests, and I've been doing it now for about a year, and that doesn't mean I have 52 episodes.
No.
Unfortunately. Because just as well as too, life happens and you can't get episodes out every week.
Yeah,
and I used to stress
you're
out.
Still working a full-time job.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, just is what it is.
Yeah. I used to really stress about that though, and I don't. I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. I don't like to talk about my military service so much.
Sure.
And it's not because it's just, if I talk to somebody, I don't want to feel like I'm like, I get this is probably just me in my head. I just feel like I'm trying to one up somebody if I start talking about that. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not what I'm about. But there's, without going into super detail, I just didn't. You get in some situations where you're faced with like your own mortality, and then everything else, once you make it through a situation like that, everything else just becomes so trivial. And my wife absolutely hates me for this, because we'll have a situation that happens, something bad, and she's losing her mind, about to pull her hair out, all that stuff. And I'm just sitting there like, could be worse. You know what I mean? That's always the mindset. You know what I mean? And so whenever I get discouraged about that sort of thing, that's usually my mantra. It's it could be worse.
Yeah. Well, I work in public libraries. I've talked about it a bunch on this podcast, and sometimes things happen. There was a day we're a very small staff. I don't know. This is post-COVID shutdowns, but COVID was still sort of lingering on the fringes there, right? And we had the perfect storm one week. We had a couple of open positions, so we didn't even have somebody for those positions. And then I had 3 staff get COVID in the same week.
Right.
And we got to a point where I was like, all right, we're closing. And my assistant director was like, what? I said, we don't have the staff to open.
Right.
We don't have the staff to do this. We're going to close for I think it was just one day. It may have ended up being 2, but I can't remember. We're going to close, and we're going to try again on Monday because it was right at the weekend. We'll put a post on social media. We'll put a post on the door and say, I'm sorry, due to COVID, we are closed. And
right.
She was like, really? I said, we are not brain surgeons.
No.
Like, somebody is not going to die because we are not open on Friday this week. We will be okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be all right. And I don't want to be flippant about closing doors of any business, but, you come to a situation where you're like, this is really not that serious a thing, even to that point, and getting super stressed over it is not going to help anything. You stress, you just suffer twice kind of thing.
Yeah.
When I'm also preaching at myself right now because I am a known anxious mess about some things, and I get better and better about realizing, hey, this isn't that important. I actually took a mantra up a while back that somebody was complaining, and this is not an original phrase. I didn't come up with this. Somebody else did, but I remembered it at that moment. They were complaining about something that happened, and they were so stressed and frustrated, and uh, they described it as tragic, and that's what triggered this quote. I said, no, it's not tragic. I said, if the problem can be fixed with time or money, it's not tragic. It's unfortunate.
Yep.
And so you can move on. You can move
Yeah.
past that. Don't stress and kill yourself over it.
Yeah. And I don't ever try to discredit anybody's issues because
Oh,
just
no.
because you're not going through it, or maybe you have gone through it, it's like it's still a big deal to them. And that's the way I always try to look at things when people are coming at me with their problems. I'll try to
Mm-hmm.
listen and empathize to the best of my ability, and not try to be like, oh, well, it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But looking at most of the problems that I've had in my life, they've all worked out. Now, how they have worked out is a completely different story.
Yeah.
But they've worked out. You just got to kind of put your head down and push through those
Yep.
those rough times, and you come out on the other side. And one, you've most likely learned something out of that situation. You've learned to deal with adversity better, or you've learned to do something specific, a task a little better, so that
Sure.
situation doesn't happen again. But it's hard to tell someone that when they're going through the immediate shock of an issue.
Well,
You know what
see,
I mean?
that advice, don't stress, breathe, step by step, work through it. That's advice for someone when they're not going through it,
Right.
because that's not helping them then.
No.
You've got to start preparing yourself to be in the grip of things
Mm-hmm.
when you're not in the grip of things.
Right.
It's that whole ounce of prevention, pound of cure thing.
Right.
You can't. That advice does not fix it when the heat starts creeping up
Mm-hmm.
on you.
Yep.
You've got to be ready for it and know that, okay, the stress is hitting. I'm getting, in the heat of the moment here. It's getting tough. Calm. One step at a time. What's the next thing I need to do to get out of this? What is the next thing I need to do to get out of whatever situation it is? Because panicking doesn't help.
No.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny too, because we were talking about this on Instagram last night, and whenever I get mad about this sort of thing, I'm happy I have my wife to kind of reel me back in, man, because she's just like, do you not understand how short of a time you've been doing this podcast, and you have like a community of people around you already that like you, that have no business knowing who you are, just
Right.
because you send people DMs, and just because you talk to people on a podcast for an hour or two.
Yeah.
you
And
know
we talked about that for a while last night. How this whole podcast happens because I have the whatever to message someone on Instagram
yeah
or on Facebook
Yeah.
that I'm not friends with on Facebook and be like, I've got a couple of cool guests that are coming up later this season who I just out of the blue messaged on Facebook, like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know who I am, and they're like, yeah, I'll come on the podcast. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense.
Right.
This
Right.
it really is that easy, y'all. I hate to burst some bubble to peel back the veil a little. That's really how this happens.
Yeah. Well, and I have a lot of friends that do the gigging thing, and I have a few
Mm-hmm.
friends that do the mid-level ish session work, and the way I've always looked at it, because I've have some local people, I always go to like a local jam. Not always. I try to get there as much as I can, but there's a local jam that happens. Pretty much just an open mic where people get together and hang out, and it's a good time. It's a
Yeah.
nice variety of music too. It's not just like rock-based music. You have everybody. We've had people do poetry and stand up there before too. It's just a
Oh, that's
hang.
rad.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a great atmosphere. But I've had a few people that talk to me about this, and they're looking at the outside perspective of seeing what happens, right? They're not seeing the work
Right.
that goes in behind it. But my thing is, and with talking to a lot of people that are doing the thing, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm.
I hate to say it so simplistically, but it is just get your butt up and do it.
Yep. Just do it.
Just
do the thing.
if you want to be a session player, right? one, okay, bare bones, you got to be a good player. Like there's no getting around that.
Yep.
You know, but what are you doing to enable the other things that need to happen, like being a cool hang, networking with people, going to like, are you going to any writers' nights? You're in the perfect location to do all this, because a lot of the guys that I know personally that do the session stuff, they're not the best players. When you think of like a session player, you're thinking of those like high level, like those
Yep.
Brent Masons and those Andy Woods and stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying they're not good,
No, they're
but
phenomenal.
those guys at that lower level, they're a cool hang. They show up on time. They get the job done quickly and efficiently, and they call it good.
Well, I talk about this when I talk to players who are frustrated about the way they play. I try to tell myself this when I'm frustrated about the way I play, because I'm highly frustrated, and I can tell in my own playing that I've not played live like I used to.
Right.
Like back when I was gigging a ton, I can see the staleness in my playing, right? I see it, but that's neither here nor there. That's my fault. I'm not finding other players to get together with and play music. That's the trick.
Yeah.
I need 4 more hours in the day. That's fine.
Right.
But you've got to put yourself in a situation where you're going to meet those people to do those things. You're not going to get anywhere sitting at home complaining about not doing the thing you want to do.
For sure.
And that is me giving myself my own medicine about a bunch of things in life. But playing music and like skill level, and it's a skill, y'all. There is talent in music and there is skill in music, and they don't always go together.
For sure.
I know some very talented people who don't have a lot of skill.
Yeah.
And I know some very skilled people who had to work and fight and scrape and claw for every bit of their ability. It didn't just come naturally in talent. They both exist, and sometimes they play nice. But it's not a zero-sum game.
Mm-hmm.
There's not, oh, I'm not the best, so I shouldn't play guitar.
Right.
Because there's only one Brent Mason.
For sure.
There's
Yeah.
only one Andy Wood.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot more session work or gigs or bands to be in than there are players of that caliber.
For sure. Yeah.
You,
The thing is too, though, I mean, in this day and age, I'm not saying you don't want to get out and network with face to face with people.
Yeah.
That's usually the best thing to do, in my opinion. But you have everything at your fingertips on your phone, man.
mm-hmm.
You can start putting yourself out online. You can start, because at the end of the day, if people are looking at you as a musician, you almost have to brand yourself a certain way. And that's really what you
Yes.
have to do. And it sounds weird and maybe gross to think about it that way, but at the end of the day, that's if you're trying to build a career, a living in music, that's what you have to do. You got to be able to sell yourself as that musician.
And it's going to be stepping stones.
Yeah.
It's not going to be oh, I decide I want to do this. You're not going to submit a resume somewhere.
Right.
You're not gonna get interviewed for the job. You've got to go out and do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, that journey to either making it a full-time job or getting to whatever level you want to get to, for some people, it happens way fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
The all the right things align. For some people, it takes a long time of doing the thing, meeting people, going out and making the connections, because everybody hates the phrase, it's all about who you know. Well, you're not going to know anybody if you don't get out and do the thing. Whether
Right.
that's like you're saying, you can do it digitally,
Mm-hmm.
especially for folks who live in, places like Starkville, Mississippi,
Yeah.
or, because originally this podcast was not meant to be what it is. It was never meant to be online interviews and putting on a YouTube. It was meant to be, I traveled and actually sat down in person with people.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, it wasn't doable, especially with
Right.
COVID, and because that's when things really get kicked off, was during COVID. And but you've got to find a way to, if you're in Nashville, if you're in Atlanta, if you're in Austin, Atlanta, LA, New York, Chicago, big cities, go out, do the thing, find the stuff, find the people, play the music, be a cool person to hang out with. Um, you know, buy the band a round of beers every now and
Right.
again, kind of thing.
Hmm.
Just get to know people and that are doing it. Um, I think it's Rhett Shull who said it once, and it's really stuck with me. When it comes to playing and being a musician and making a living, you got to be present to win.
Yeah.
You got to be there. You got
Hmm.
to be out there.
Yeah. Well, and the other cool thing that happens when you start to do this, the coolest part for me about being a musician and knowing musicians is, we're wired a little bit differently in the way we think and the way we act. And there's a cool community that ends up happening. And whether that's online or whether that's in person, you're surrounded by like-minded people. You're getting
Right.
that sense of, oh, I'm kind of part of this, and that's what I really like with, your podcast, the 60 Cycle Hum podcast, all the big
Mm-hmm.
podcasts. That's what I really love is there's a community associated with that podcast. You could just find it one day on Apple Music or whatever you find it on, and go to their Facebook page, and now you're part of the group. Start interacting, start hanging out, like, comment, figure out what these people are all about, and you never know where those situations will lead,
Yeah, most people get into this because they want to talk about gear with people, or they
Yeah.
want to talk about music with people.
Hmm.
Actually, I recently got a comment, a review. Y'all, if you're listening, please make sure to rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening to it. It helps. Um, I got a review, and the guy. I love this review. I genuinely do. They gave me a 5-star review, but then they said, "Don't lecture us." They said,
There you go.
"We know you love super reverb. We
Hmm.
don't have to need to hear about it all the time." Yes, you do. I will never not preach at this altar. Um, you know, but it's they were the gist was there's other gear, there's other things. Well, here's the deal. Like with this podcast, and this goes to these people got into this because they wanted to talk about these things. If you are listening to this podcast and you think it's only about gear, I'm way more interested in the stories
Right.
of the people either making it or playing or making music. Um, I've had whole episodes where we never talked about gear. We just talked about experiences with music
Yeah.
because that's what I care about. I care about the music. I'm not even a songwriter guy. I mean, I'm not a guitarist guy. Like, for the longest time, I didn't have a favorite guitarist.
Hmm.
I had favorite songwriters,
Right.
which is why it's still such a mystical art to me, and I just I've not developed that skill the way I should have.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, most of the people doing this just want to talk about music.
Yeah.
So talk to them about music.
Yeah. Well, and I've had, anybody that follows anything I do obviously know I'm a huge Wampler fan, and you
Yeah.
guys, I've had a few people in the past that have just been like, "Oh man, what's the deal? Why do you have so much stuff on your board from Wampler? Blah 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 blah." I'm like, dude, they pulled me out of a funk, and it sounds so stupid, but they really did. After getting out of the military, you leave this culture of where anybody and everybody is willing to help you do anything, and they're all constantly improving themselves, not just physically but mentally, spiritually,
Mm-hmm.
however you want to look at it. And you get out of that culture and you go to a 9 to 5 where nobody even cares if you show up. You kind of get a little like down, man,
Yeah.
you know and not having that sense of community anymore with the military. And now I'm like, oh, well, now I have a podcast. And I will say, I am extremely sorry if anybody from Wampler Pedals happens to listen to this. I'm sorry for bugging you guys on social media because I was tagging you
It,
guys a lot. I'm sorry for, being a weirdo if I ever was. I
ain't
don't think I
ain't
was,
ain't
but
no shame in the game. Tag companies, tag folks all the time.
and you get these conversations with, once again, I don't want to backtrack too much, but you get those people that look from the outside perspective, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they hear things. I guess I'm okay to say it because Brian said it, but I had the opportunity to go hang out with Brian at a studio.
Yeah.
And the only reason why that happened was because, one, I bought a lot of Wampler pedals. Two, I push that stuff on social media without any expectation of anything. I don't get
Yep.
anything from them, you know what I mean, out of that. There's nothing that I gain. But what I did gain was an acquaintance that build some of my favorite pedals.
Yep.
And I got to go hang out with him at his house because I just happened to be, Indianapolis, Martinville, is pretty close to each other, and happened to be up there visiting my family. It's like, oh yeah, why don't you just come on down for a little bit? It's like, well, don't mind if I do. Totally wasn't expecting that, but sure,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, let's get it.
Well, and that's the raddest thing. That's the thing that I love the most about all of this. And yeah, some people that get into the listening to the podcast and watching YouTube videos and stuff like that, they're in it just for the gear. They want to see the piece, especially demos. They just want to see the piece of the gear.
Right.
They want to hear it. They want to get out. But I'm in it because of the people
Yeah.
in the community around here, and that's why I love doing this. It's people like Brian. I was just texting Brian the other day, because Brian's just one of those guys in this industry that it builds community around him.
Yeah.
He's a little nerdy. It's fine. It's
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
He's a total nerd. But it's fine. That's why he makes good pedals.
Yeah.
It's funny because Brian and Wampler Pedals are indirectly responsible for me getting into YouTube gear stuff and podcasts as well because of the Clarksdale.
Yeah.
Because I did not pay attention to gear. I
Right.
played a lot of gear, but I didn't like lust after a bunch of stuff and like go and look online and find all the latest, greatest everything. Until a friend of mine had a Wampler Clarksdale for sale, and I was like, "What is that? You have a pedal named after my hometown?"
Right.
And I was like, I had never heard of Wampler at the time. And so I bought it from him because it was a Clarksdale. It was named after my hometown. And after that, I started realizing, oh, there's a whole culture around pedals and gear and people talking about it and hanging out. And again, for me, it's more about the music because I have met and listened to some great music and developed to get to know. I don't know. I'm waxing poetic. I'm basically gushing all over the idea that I love this music culture and community that started. And it's some people don't see that just you get out of it what you get in.
Right.
And it's not about these little, it's not about these little boxes that we put on the pedal board. It's about the people that make them and the music that it makes. And I don't know. I think I'm actually getting a little gear jaded, and I'm just like people who are just like pedal. I'm like, no, it's like there's a story here. There's something to learn here.
Well, and see, that's the thing, man. It's always about the how and why for me. Yeah. If you can give me the how and why, I'm way more interested in what kind of I'm more interested in that than what kind of picks or what string gauges you use. Like, I can look all that up online.
10 I use 9 to 42s and 10 to 46s, and I use honey picks. So
there you go.
It's easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of which, honey picks, super rad. I've been playing with those. We'll get on gear for a second, so we don't piss off too many people.
It's okay. We'll go to gear on the Patreon episode. It'll be
okay.
Great.
There we go. There we go. No,
y'all. We will talk about gear here in just for a few minutes.
I love the stuff that Rick is doing. And when I first reached out to him, he was one of the best conversations I've had on the podcast. He's such a down to earth dude, and he makes such phenomenal picks, man. And to believe it or not, I got a bunch of different sizes, and the 5.6 is actually relatively comfortable, dude. Yep.
Right here, it's on my desk because I use it that often. Look, y'all, if you're still sitting around and you're still playing the little 0.88 or the 0.80 or the 0.76, I can't believe I remember some of these sizes of the typical picks. You owe it to yourself to buy some thick boy picks, and give it a go. I find that when I use this 5.6, which actually I kind of want him to make me a 5.6 with a more rounded edge.
Yeah.
Because this one's got the pointy Queen Bee, I think this one's called.
Yeah.
Anyway, my hand has less tension in it. I hold onto the pick so much cleaner. My picking is clearer with a thicker pick. And yes, you can strum with one.
Yeah. Yeah, just for a reference, I don't know if you'll be able to hear.
Oh yeah. That is the
So this is the Beehive, and it's a 3 mil. And
Oh,
I have been playing the heck out of the 3 mil.
that's my 3 mil beehive.
Yep.
I
But
need
yeah,
to order
man.
some more. I'm starting to wear some of these out because I use them a lot.
Well, I am. I don't know how the process is going, but I'm in the process of getting some custom picks made.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. But the bad thing is, everybody's so busy. I'm sure it's going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
And the plan is definitely in place, and it's going to happen. I just need to iron out some details with Rick.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I had Rick do a. Actually, I say I had Rick. Rick donated to my very first giveaway back in
Oh, nice.
2021, and he did 4 picks with the 40-watt podcast logo on them,
Mm-hmm.
and they looked phenomenal. I still don't have a pick with my own podcast logo on it. Um, a listener, who has a band, and I can't remember it right now, and I'm so sorry. You're gonna be so mad at me. Um, it's right there, right at the tip of my tongue. I'm gonna remember it in the Patreon episode probably,
Right.
and I'm sorry. Uh, but yeah, he has them along with a bunch of other stuff. We gave away a Wampler Clarksdale and some Caulfield cables and some other stuff. It was a cool time.
Well, and see, this is what I love about podcasting, because being in the military, I was out of the gear world for such a long time.
Yeah,
Um, I kind of lost touch with everything, and almost a decade of being out of touch with the gear world is like a millennia. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I don't shy away from it, man. I am super ignorant on a lot of stuff gear related, and I will be 100% transparent. I mean, for instance, having Austin from Runway Audio on, he started
Oh, yeah,
talking
yeah.
about picofarad per foot and stuff like that. I'm like, whoa, 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 hold up. I don't know what that means.
Right. You're
You know?
gonna need to talk to me
Yeah.
like I am 10.
Yes. But it's a good thing too. And I've had a few people that kind of get mad about that, like, well, how do you not know? And it's like, okay, if I don't know, I'm okay with that, because I guarantee there's somebody listening to this episode that is asking the same question and
Yep.
does not have the opportunity to speak on it.
So I know this because a lot of I'm gonna rile some people up.
There we go.
Let's rile some
Just
people
get
up
it.
here towards the end. So a lot of I'm trying not to use this term in a defamatory way.
Okay.
A lot of bedroom players
Mm-hmm.
sit, eat, sleep, breathe this stuff.
Yep.
They do. And I do too now. I gig, if I count my show choir gigs, I might do 20 to 25 gigs a year, right?
Right.
At most. I'm not gigging much anymore. But back when I was gigging 100 gigs a year, 120 gigs a year, whatever it was, it averaged out. I didn't keep count, y'all. I was gigging 2 and 3 times a week on average. So, we'd have runs. I remember weekends of certain blues festivals. I would have 8 gigs over 3 days.
Right.
Those kinds of
Right.
weekends. The people doing that, like the day in day out gigging, your local scene, your regional scene, they don't know these things.
Right.
They do not.
Mm-hmm.
They don't sit around and obsess over the absolute right version of a blues breaker to put on their pedal board.
Nope.
They go into a store, they try a couple of overdrives in the store, find the one they like, and that lives on their pedal board for 15 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Those I did not care about gear the way I care about it now. When I was gigging and playing, I owned 2 guitars, 1 amp, and anywhere between 4 and 6 pedals on a pedal board.
Yeah.
And that was everything I owned.
Mm-hmm.
And I gigged a lot.
Yeah.
On that stuff. So not knowing something is the norm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Knowing it is the obsessive folks like I've become about this kind of stuff.
Well, and I think we get hyper focused as musicians too, because you look on any social media platform, and whether it's gear and the knowledge behind the gear, or whether it's the guitar acrobatics that you see 12-year-olds playing, you have to take a step back and look at the bigger picture of things. Because, okay, in my area, how many guitar players are there? There's probably tens of thousands.
Yes.
In my area, how many of those tens of thousands guitar players are online looking and researching gear, it's going to be a significant drop.
Mm-hmm.
And of those of those people, how many people are actually commenting on stuff online? It's probably going to be another pretty significant drop.
Yes,
So
exactly.
you're looking at this marginal percentage of just jerks online. And it doesn't represent the majority. It represents one guy that's just kind of taking his day out on you.
Yep.
And that's all it is. And I think the second, like, because it's really hard. I went through it too, man. With people putting negative comments, you get 15 positive comments, and the one that is kind of a jerk, you're just like obsessing over now.
Yeah, you're preaching to me now. Like the one I had a review on Apple that really got under my skin, and I was like,
Right,
why are you letting this bother you?
right. And I will say, it just doesn't. I think the sooner you kind of do, and I don't think it ever goes away because it's always going to kind of get at you a little bit because you put a lot of work into whatever you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You're proud of what you're doing, and the second somebody discredits that, you just as a human being are going to be like, well, hold on, you know, let's listen here, guy. I'm happy about this, but
Yeah.
you have to put it in perspective. There's not many musicians in the world. I mean, just take the United States. There's not many musicians in the United States. We are a small group of people, and to take that small group of people and take the extremely low percentage of people that are jerks and give them the gratification of you being mad. They don't care if you're mad.
Yeah.
you know it
Like
just
so I love using this now that I know this as an illustration for guitar players to understand
hmm
how infinitesimally small we are in the world of online media and the online everything and, fan bases and community and culture. We are small, y'all. We are so tiny. Um, I'm going to use an arbitrary example, like,
okay,
someone like Dan and Mick from that pedal show, right?
right.
Every Monday they do a question and answer episode,
hmm
right? And it's typically around noon, which means I usually can't attend because I have a standing Monday lunch meeting
right.
almost every week. Um, but neither here nor there. They have, I don't know, what do they have, like 300,000 followers on
It's up
YouTube,
there,
something
yeah.
like that. They have like 300,000 followers. And on a live stream, that live stream every Monday, they get about 1,000 people watching
hmm
them live.
right.
That's pretty flippin' awesome that 1,000 guitar players, and let's admit it, they're probably all guitar players,
Yeah.
I'm assuming, tune in to watch these guys do question and answer for a couple of hours about guitars and pedals. That feels like a lot of people. My wife has gotten into LawTube, which
mm,
is YouTube for lawyers. And there are several people on LawTube who like to cover pop culture cases,
okay, yeah.
right? And like the Alex Murdaugh trials that have been going on in South Carolina, they were covering those. But a big one was the Johnny Depp Amber Heard defamation case, right?
Right.
So there's a LawTube. She's a former uh, assistant DA, I think, in Los Angeles County,
hmm
who now lives in Nashville. Um, she doesn't practice law as a lawyer anymore. She does YouTube.
hmm
Her anyway. I know way more about her than I need to because it's literally on in the living room right now while we're recording this episode. My wife is watching her live stream.
right.
She has 600,000 followers on YouTube.
Oh,
700,000.
yeah.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Right.
When she was covering Johnny Depp Amber Heard and she would do live streams, she had 250,000 people watching
Yeah,
her live stream
exactly. Yeah.
on YouTube.
hmm
250,000 watching her live stream. We are so small.
Yeah.
We're so when someone doesn't know something,
Right.
or when we're like, how is this not everywhere? That's how.
Yep.
This is a tiny industry.
Yeah.
This is a tiny market.
Yeah.
So it's why we keep piggybacking off of whatever electronics are being made for major manufacturers. That's what we make pedals out of because
Right.
that's what's available.
Right. Right. Yeah. It it's one of those things, and that's what I have a few friends that I'm kind of helping get going with the social media thing. Not that I think I'm doing phenomenal at it, but I'm just, progress is progress, right?
Yeah.
I expect progress, not perfection. Um, but it's one of those things where it's just, if you want to do it, just consistent and honest content, man. Don't try to act like you're someone you're not, because the second you
Yes.
start acting like someone you're not, people are going to see right through that, and they're going to rip you apart.
Yep.
So for me, being ignorant on certain things, I don't really care. You can say I'm a ding dong on comments or whatever for not knowing what whatever is, and I'm going to be okay with that. You know.
Yeah. No, and that's it. That's why I have the tagline at the end of this episode, at the end of these shows. For everybody that actually stays to the end, that's why I say, be good to yourselves, be kind to each other.
Yep.
That's it.
That is
That's
my
why that's
favorite.
first. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's it. That's what we're here for. So, I love the guitar community, and I love what it's built. But and we're lucky. There's not really that many trolls in our community.
No.
That's the best part. But I think occasionally some folks need to take a real hard look at how seriously they take this.
Yeah.
Especially when you have someone who's like, how did you not know that 44 gauge copper wire has a picofarad per feet of blah blah 0.00726 nano whatever's?
Right.
I don't like. How do you not know that the JRC 4551 op amp is obviously better than the JRC 4563 op amp? Because I don't care.
Right.
I do not care. Those the well actuallys.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, that's it.
Look, man, I like pedals that make me want to play. I like gear that makes me want to play. I don't care how it's made. I don't care if it's through hole or surface mount or whatever the hot button pedal topic is. If it sounds good to me and it feels good, or a guitar plays well, if it inspires me to play, dude, that's what I want.
And see, I approach this as someone who became that snob.
Mm-hmm.
And I was. And I know people, y'all listen to this podcast, and y'all that have become my friends know I do. I like nice things. I like expensive things. And sometimes I get caught up in the surface mount versus through hole thing. I've had to, like, literally in the last 2 weeks, I have finally had to come to grips with, okay, surface mount does sound as good, and in some cases actually sounds better.
Yeah,
those kinds of things, like little, or the turret board versus PC boards and amps kinds of things. I still prefer a turret board or a hand wired board, simply because if something breaks, I can fix it.
Right.
If it's on a PC, I'm not PC board. I'm not.
Oh
fixing that.
No,
I'm not touching that. But as far as sound quality, I'm gonna get roasted for this one. It's fine.
Yeah,
they sound good. There have been a lot of really great amps built on PCBs. Looking at Mesa Boogie.
Yeah. Well, and when I think of amplifiers, I think of gigging, and
yes,
if it's something that is inspiring me to put on a better show for the audience, I don't really care what it is. Because I've played some of those gigs where you just have the horrible backline. You got the twin reverb that's been there for 30 years, or any number of things, or just bad power at a gig.
Yeah.
But if I have something that inspires me and it makes me sound like I want to play the instrument, and I'm going to be okay. I don't need anything.
That is exactly what I tell people. And that's like whenever somebody inevitably, I'm looking at a couple of you right now. You can't. Those of you listening can't see this, but I'm actually literally staring at a couple of people right now who like to come at me about, because I have a lot of amps, and they're like, you could just get a quad Cortex and just capture them, and then you could sell them.
Right.
Or you could just get a Helix. I had a Helix. I don't have the amps because I think they sound better. Like, I do think they sound better, but that's not why I have them. If that were the only thing, I'd have a quad Cortex or a Helix or an Axe FX, and I wouldn't have all these amps. The amps make me excited to play.
Right.
For no good reason. There's no logical reason. There's you can absolutely do it with the Helix. You can absolutely do it with insert XYZ modeler or, capture device or Tonex now or whatever. You can absolutely do the thing and play the gig with that and sound just fine. And the audience will never know you're right. They'd never know. But I'll know when
Exactly.
I'm playing.
Yep.
And it doesn't make me excited to play.
Yeah. And in turn, the audience will know because you won't be excited.
Yeah, that's it.
They might not know the ins and outs of why, but they'll know.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. I gig. I say a gig when I gig and I play with the band that is a big enough deal to do this. But when I can, I take an actual rotating speaker live.
100%.
I've talked about it on this podcast multiple times. Do I need to do that? No.
No. Yeah.
Does it make me excited when I hit the button to turn that thing on?
100%.
Every single time.
Right.
And that's why I do it.
Right.
Yeah. So play what makes you happy. Do what makes you excited. So I had a couple of questions. Let's see if we have a couple of questions from the Discord listeners. There is a Discord for this podcast. You're welcome to join us over there as we talk about gear and culture and sports and all sorts of things over there. Lots of channels. Let's see. See if there's anything we haven't covered. Mike asked, "What's going to be your next Wampler pedal?" He said he's only teasing, though.
No, I think I might be kind of Wamplered out for a little bit, to be honest with you, man. I know it's a shock to everybody, but no, I have the Gearbox and I have the Pantheon Dual Overdrive, dude, and those two cover, any distortion, overdrive, and if I really want to get rowdy, I can put the Dracaris on there for the high gain stuff.
Yeah.
I have a Tumnus. It's a great. I love that circuit. But yeah, I don't know. It really depends on what they put out. If they put something out that I think I could use, I'm not really gigging as much as I would like to, just like you are.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I look at gear. If I can use it for a gig, I'm probably going to get it. But and this is gonna probably make some people mad too. I'm good on overdrive. I'm good on distortion right now.
Man, yes. Preach. I'm in the same boat.
And for the type of music that I play, it's just straight up rock or maybe a little heavier, but I just need a super solid overdrive, a super solid distortion, and some delay, and I'm gonna be okay. I'm a simple guy, man. Give me some humbuckers or some P90s, and I'm gonna be all right, man. Occasional single coils if I got a country thing, but I prefer the humbucker stuff.
Sure. I like the P90s, but I'm really coming around to humbuckers lately.
Yeah.
So, as we near the end of the episode, couple of things. Have you tried the Metaverse yet? The delay they make?
I have not. I really want to get it. The only reason I have not got it was because I do not have another amplifier, and I cannot justify having that pedal without running it in stereo.
Oh, I got you. Well, it's time to get another amp.
I know, right? I have
some suggestions.
Okay, I'll
do it. Well, no, I've been on these lately. This has been my thing, and I keep staring at them and not buying them. I'm doing well, y'all. I don't know what step I'm on, but I'm on a step of trying to recover. But I keep, ever since I suggested one to Joe Branton on the Guitar Nerds, I keep seeing PV Delta Blues 15s popping up, and I'm like, oh, they're like $300.
I know.
$350. I'm like, that is a 30-watt amp with a 15-inch speaker, an effects loop, 2 channels, reverb, and tremolo. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Just get that thing.
You're over here buying Mesa Boogies and stuff. Or Mesa Boogies, however you want to pronounce it.
I know. That was a long story. I didn't have anything that did high gain.
I got you. Yeah.
I didn't have anything. And so I wanted something to get the chug on a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because I bought the high gain amp and traded off my Floyd Rose guitar. Because, man, I couldn't keep doing the Floyd thing. I tried.
Right.
Yeah, it's just not me. So I tell you what, as we're wrapping up, I'm going to start a new segment of this show.
Okay.
So You obviously you listen to the Tone Mob, and Blake has his classic questions.
Okay.
And other other podcasts have their thing. I sent to make sure that every episode has a little bit of a gear segment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start adding this at the end, and you're going to be the first one to answer this question.
Oh, dude, put me on the spot, man.
Because this kind of leads into it. This is like our conversation now is leading into it. So what are you gassing for? Like, what's your next thing? Like, what's on your radar that you're like, that is the next thing I need to have?
Oh man, it's a hard thing, man.
And that's open ended. My only qualification will be music gear of some kind. It could be guitar, amp, pedal, microphone. Who knows?
I will say I did just get a Reverend.
Oh yeah.
And technically I have not paid that guitar off yet. Now it is in my house.
Yeah.
But no, I'm really digging the Reverends. I know you're not kind of a fan of the necks, but I'm really digging them.
I picked one up day before yesterday at a local store. It's on consignment. It's a model I've never seen before. It's this double cutaway semi-hollow. I'll send you a picture.
Awesome.
Offline. I'll send you a picture. Maybe you can tell me what it is. That neck I liked.
Okay.
It felt better. It felt better than the ones I've played in the past.
Well, I will say I'm really digging the Reverend stuff. Obviously, if you guys are watching, I got a cool hat on from Rev. But no, dude, my ultimate gas though, eventually, and I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I've always wanted a white custom, just with the Justin Hawkins thing, you know. It's been something I've always wanted, and I've just never had the money for it. You know, I've never been in a position where I can just drop, you know, what are they even up to now? You know, every time I don't even want to look anymore. You know what I mean? Like I just don't even want to see it because I'm like, oh, I can get close now. I'm close, and then I get on Reverb. I'm like, nope, I'm not.
They've gone up again.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. I figured.
Yeah.
So maybe one day.
I'm not going to look it up either.
Yeah, please don't.
No. So white Les Paul custom. That's a solid one. Of course, I hear white Les Paul custom, and I think Randy Rhoads.
Of course, yeah.
That's not even my style of music, but that's how ubiquitous I think of the white Les Paul custom with Randy Rhoads
for sure.
There's a whole bunch of other people that have played them, but anyway, well, Jake, that brings us up to time on the regular episode here. So
Sweet.
We're going to say our goodbyes to our listeners. And I'm going to say a special thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. New Patreon supporters this week. Got Duncan. We got Andy Johns. Also, thank you to all of my other Patreon supporters. David Evangelista, Josh Gierkin, Blake Jefferson, Nick Call, Andrew Hensley, Alan Gresham, Jonathan. Oh, dang it. You know what? That's every one of them, not just the current ones. So I may have to nix that. Thank you to all of my Patreon supporters that are current, which is now Duncan Watson, Andy Johns, David Evangelista, Josh Gierkin, Blake Jefferson, Nick Call, Andrew Hensley, Alan Gresham, Dan Pilver of Lewitt Microphones, Scott Hamilton of the Effects Loop podcast, Andy Koenig, Jim Burns, Tom Kelly, Heath Batt, Ben Fair of Electromotive Sound Pedals. Y'all, he's coming back. I told y'all he was going to. Rick Calhoun of Honey Picks, Jeffrey Walks, and Kyle Harris. Sure hope you've enjoyed this episode. Jake, thank you so much for being here this week. I really, really appreciate it. I've been wanting to get you on for a while. It's one of those things where it's like timing and my life, and I'm just a ball of chaos and trying to get things to happen.
Well, I sincerely appreciate it, Phillip, because I mean, I was a fan of this podcast long before I even thought of doing anything. So, you know, it's kind of a surreal moment, man. So I really appreciate it, dude.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming on. And we're going to go over and we're going to talk a little more over on the Patreon episode. But listeners, thank you so much for being here. In the meantime, as I always say, until next time, be good to yourselves, be kind to each other, and make some noise.